regular session. Thank you everyone for joining us on a summer day. Appreciate that. I will ask you if you would please join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I must confess that I'm a little out of sorts at 3 o'clock. I'm usually doing this when it's dark. Board members, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
I second. Any comments? Moved by Janine, seconded by Adriana to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And this would be one of our audience participation times. I think we have some forms. Well, actually, I think we actually have forms.
This is something different.
Yeah, but they're both.
I know.
It's 3 o'clock.
I'm thinking. Okay, perfect. Okay. So there are 3 requests today, and they're related to agenda items. So I'm going to ask those people to speak when we get to that agenda item. And so for board members, what that will look like is we'll do the regular presentation of the agenda item. One of them is on policy approval, and 2 of them are on the game share discussion. And so I'll have the cabinet member present. We'll take the audience time, and then we'll have more discussion on those topics. So with that, I will be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I'll second that.
Any comments? It's been moved by Janine, seconded by Glenn to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And now that we have a list of action items that are policy revisions, and we'll start with Adam.
Find my way. So the first action item has to do with a contract for commercial food products. Back in July, we received word that the vendor that we had a contract with was nullifying the contract, basically pulling the contract, and we were going to have to go out and find a new vendor. And what you have here is the result of that RFP. So I would recommend that the board award the contract to Oregon Child Nutrition Coalition, which is a food buying cooperative of 80 Oregon school districts for the purchase of food supplies, the school nutrition program. And we have Cindy Longway here if you have any questions about the specifics of the contract.
Okay, anyone have any clarifying questions on the contract before we make a motion?
You can do it after the motion.
Sure, that's fine. All right, then be looking for a motion.
I make a recommendation to approve the contract for commercial food products to Cisco Portland in conjunction with the OCNC Food Buying Cooperative.
Second.
All right, any questions? Jean?
I was just curious because I went to the website, it showed the website, and I didn't see a lot of information about, I saw where they had like 70 some groups that were together putting this coalition together. But I was curious about, the nutritional aspect. I guess I was just concerned about the level of the food that we are purchasing, processed, those kind of things. So.
From this particular group or from in general?
In general, is this like how many people, was there multiple groups that we were able to look at and we chose this one? Yeah, I'm curious, sorry.
The Nutrition Coalition put out an RFP, and I believe 2 vendors responded, Food Service of America and Cisco. And Cisco was awarded the contract.
Okay, so it's like a coalition of, like all the groups come together and then you each have
There's 80 approximately 80 school districts. And some of those could be private schools or state schools also that belong to this Child Nutrition Coalition. And it actually has a board of directors, and they are the ones that put out the RFP and then put that out to all of us as members.
Oh, and then you voted on the two different ones?
Well,
as
what came in as the low bid for between the two vendors.
And I wonder if it would be helpful for you to just describe some of the nutritional guidelines that have to be met in this whole process.
We follow the National School Lunch Program guidelines that we have to follow for the nutritional pieces. So we put out the bid. When we put out the bid, they have to follow our guidelines for what we're looking for nutrition.
Okay.
So it has to meet all the criteria.
And both these organizations did, but that one, Cisco came in
Yes.
lower and,
We actually had a contract with the other vendor that did not receive it, but they terminated the agreement, and it was a three-party,
Yes. Portland, Beaverton, and Hillsboro.
and there was some issues with one of those partners that caused Food Service of America to terminate that contract. It wasn't us.
It's a curiosity question. I used to work for Oregon Child Development Corporation, and we also did Cisco. Is it part of that buying group? Is it just limited to elementary and K-12 schools, or is it also to?
No, I couldn't speak to that as far as the development.
Yeah, it was just an agency I worked through, and I was just curious.
But it is a broader group than just K-12 school districts.
Okay, that's what my question was. And they set guidelines, and that's what this, okay, that's the way I
Guidelines
understood
are
it.
actually federal guidelines.
They're federal. But do they go beyond that, this coalition group, or just follow the federal? They just follow the federal.
Any other questions? Okay, so it's been moved by Adriana, seconded by Glenn to approve the contract for commercial food products. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Cindy. And the next is to approve the revisions to policy IFF, the Citizens Curriculum Committee. Travis.
Good afternoon. I'm here to answer any questions that the board might have regarding the proposed language for policy IFF, how the members of the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee are identified by the board. I apologize for not being here the last time it was discussed. I was out sick. But it seems like we've arrived at some language where the appointment of the committee members looks similar to that of the budget committee. In August, we'll advertise the opportunity to participate in the committee, and in the board meeting in September, the board would identify those new members. 9 openings to be either reappointed or appoint a new member. Happy to answer any questions.
Clarifying questions?
Well, I don't know if it's so much clarifying as a comment of my concerns. Is that?
Nope, I want just clarifying questions and then or motion,
Okay.
because then we can take comments after motion. Yeah.
You can comment specifically on the student addition to it. And my clarifying question was how you intended to, do you intend to include the students in the same nomination process or through different methods?
From what I heard from the debate about pros and cons of having students on the panel, or having that be the same or separate as the process for adult non-student membership, what we've arrived at is that the students would be identified the same way as adults would be, just like they are now. Eddie Chavez Bolaños was here last time, and he was, I'm sorry?
Diana.
Diana also were examples of students who are identified or appointed by board members, not because they were younger or older than 18 years old, but just because they were citizens and had the right to be appointed to that committee also. So ongoing, it would be the choice of the board to select student membership to the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee under the same process as the other citizens.
I think just a note that came up last time was would those students take the place of adults, and we've changed the language so that there is no cap on the amount. It would just be small enough that we could get the committee work done, but students would be added as members in addition to the adults that we have. So,
I'm struggling to know whether I should wait for my question on this, but there's a potential difference with the students in that their interest might come about because of opportunities learned in the beginning of a leadership class, at the beginning of the school year, or something where they're more engaged and connected to having the opportunity after the school year starts. And that's a little bit different than the adults who might be applying in August to be appointed. And I just want to make sure we didn't lose the window where you could get good student opportunities aware of that maybe.
You know, that's good feedback for us as a committee. I think we could approach schools in the spring and make sure that those student leaders have that opportunity to access the application process ongoing. I agree that we're limiting their access to their main information source in the school because they're often.
The first student that was on he actually found it on the summer and applied. And so we weren't doing outreach for students. They found that.
yeah, I think without a cap on the membership, we could probably do some rolling, see what adults come on that apply. And if we don't have students that apply, we can go out and recruit, find those students, come back to you with a couple names. Great.
So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the revisions.
I move we approve the recommended revisions to policy IFF.
Second?
Any comment? Okay, Glenn and then Janine.
All right, so to be honest, I'm a little bit inclined to vote no on this, and I'll tell you why. I like the idea of a lot of the things we've discussed here, but there are two things that I'm not really so sure about. And one actually came up because of a discussion that was kind of tangentially related, not actually even to this district, but another person who was dissuaded from volunteering for something, stepping up to the plate because the application process actually scared him away. Where I know that he had been great doing that particular thing, happened to be a senior center, and needed a board member, but they wanted to know things like, well, what connections do you have and stuff like that. And he goes, well, I don't have any connection like that. The reality is they need somebody to serve. So my concern with this is having this detailed, writing these things and having to justify why I want to be on this, you're going to get less people to apply. And so that, I'm not really comfortable with that. So that's one piece. And the second piece, frankly, was what I expressed last time, was that I actually like the ability to kind of directly influence the makeup of what this committee is. In that I enjoy the fact that I can put two people on there that are kind of my representatives on there, and I don't have to worry about them convincing other people on the board who might think differently from me, because I'm trying to put a diverse opinion on that committee. And the fear that I have is like changing this out, then this is just the slate of the board and, majority rules kind of stuff. Where in the past, maybe it was or was not official. It was, at least we kind of voted as a slate and then, we didn't worry about it. Because the person I put on was probably to some people a little bit controversial. But, if she had to be voted on, I don't know whether she would have passed. And so I would have lost an opportunity to have that diverse opinion on there. That's where my concerns are. So I love a lot of these things, some good stuff, because I love having the additional people, I love the students, but those are my concerns.
Janine?
So I have a few things. I reached out to Travis because I was more concerned, I'm in support of this policy. I was more thinking, are we really sure that we want to not have a base? Like just have a number out there that's just a base number that says, we'll at least for sure have 10 members on this. I kind of like the philosophy of trying to keep our committees and our committee work, especially out to the community, similar and somewhat like our budget committee. We have the 7 members that come out from the community. It's an application process. We all can evaluate it, look it over, and decide who moves forward. I think it's a process that kind of is about not exactly who you know, And so I think that's more engaging and more inviting to people. It's like, well, I just want to be part of it, but I've never done this before and I don't know anybody. And you know, guess what? You're on the level playing field just as everybody else. And so I think it's important, though I think, you know, opposing opinions and whatnot are important, I think it's a different philosophy of this side and that side. I think we need to think about creating more people that are in the middle, that are able to be balancing of the ideas and understanding of compromise and understanding of conversation. This is an advisory board to the, you know, role to the board. They're not necessarily creating policy and whatnot. And so ultimately the board has the decision. And so these folks are just, you know, coming together to be part of it. So that's why I like the idea of making the process somewhat like if we're having these, I know when I applied for this appointed position back in 2007 to be on the board, one of the things that was discussed with me was Jeremy Lyons was, you know, hey, you've never served on any district committee or anything. And it was like, because a lot of times it was about who you knew on the board and how you were going to get in. And I just think this process of opening it up and creating a larger plan, a larger idea for this committee, I think is fantastic and a great direction. Eric?
Yeah, so I just want to address those issues. You know, I really like this this new language. I think one thing is, you know, you were concerned that people might not want to fill out a 3-page application. But I think one of the real problems we've had on the curriculum committee, you know, as a former member, is that a lot of people joined who just weren't very serious about it and were lazy and really didn't want to do anything except maybe sit in a room once a month and be talked at for an hour or two. So I think having people demonstrate that minimal level of commitment to fill out a 3-page application is a good way to filter out people who are at least semi-serious about actually, you know, putting in their own effort. And anyone who's scared away by filling out a 3-page application, I would say is someone we just don't want on that committee. They're not going to be of any use to us. So for that reason, I think I like the idea of having to apply just like the budget committee. And the other thing is, you know, you mentioned that you kind of like the system, Glenn, where we each sort of have our own pet appointees instead of having the whole board, you know, vote on a majority. As I read the language here, I don't think it specifies either way. In other words, I think we can discuss as a board after that, right? And again, remembering from the conference we were at last month when they were talking about policy objectives, you really don't want to hard code things into policy, you know, and they're set in stone and really hard to change. You know, we want to make it easy for us to change from year to year. So I think we could still have a discussion on the board, as a board next month, on whether we want to do a majority vote on each applicant or whether we want to each choose a couple of applicants and agree together to appoint those. I think all that is possible still under the language in this policy.
I was really taking thought your comments, and I'm glad that you shared what you shared, because it put, after our meetings yesterday, I think we all agreed that we want to strive for to be a high functioning board, and I think the discussion and the vote and hearing what you're saying and what's important to you, I think we will all have be able to do that when we have this discussion. For me, as I said before, diversity of thought is very important to me. So regardless where I'm at, diversity of thought is what's important to me. So I just want to let you know that, that's important. So I think it stands well.
Just want to say, I wouldn't exactly call them my pets.
Yeah.
Did we want to approach that idea of having a baseline like we do the budget committee? I'm happy to amend a motion out there, but I'm happy to go with the will of folks saying this is what, but I felt like I wanted to bring it up in discussion as Travis and I talked about. He's like, so I'm just kind of curious, do we want to set a baseline to say, much as we do the other committees, whatever number, 10?
Well, why not leave the flexibility?
Yeah.
So, in the beginning of this revised policy, it's kind of what Eric is describing, which is the board and the chair of the CCAC and staff will determine what that baseline is. So it could change from year to year depending on the work that we have ahead of us. So it could be just a recommendation is, this just suggests that we come up to an agreement without putting it in writing. And that could happen now. It could say, hey, we want you guys to be thinking about at least 2 per board member, 14 plus some kids, and we roll with that. And it might change next year.
And you feel comfortable going that direction, or, basically, having that? I don't know. That's why I'm throwing it out.
Well, the way that it stands right now, we have advertised that those 9 openings are the openings, which I guess the underlying assumption is that we're staying with the status quo size of about 14, which is more of a function of the number of board members there are than what the size of the team needs to be. So for now, it feels comfortable to just move forward with that as the status quo, and then maybe we, like Steve suggested, we revise that as a team each year, deciding to add purposefully or I guess shrink or maintain that type. I can make that happen with the advertising campaign and make sure that we get enough candidates, that you have some candidates to select from. It might help me prepare them for that next board meeting if they've expressed interest, to be able to tell them that we're shooting for 14 and that the board will be selecting from those who've put in, without saying how many that is. I mean, we're giving them any odds. Just, being upfront about how many we're looking for and what the process will be. So.
I think that's a good idea. I'm just kind of skeptical, because what if we have 9 openings, and what if we get 12 stellar applications or 12 applications that represent the diversity of thought, or however, you know what I mean? Do we really just want to say this year we're going to stick to, or as a board we might discuss and say, hey, we want to take on board all 12 as opposed to, just throwing that out there.
Well, I think that's why we wrote the policy the way we did, because if we did get 12, we can agree that, hey, maybe we can make it 16. Then we're not doing it. That's why I think we left it like
The reality, this is I want your true opinion of the board. We have 14. I'm not us. No, I'm sorry. Take that out, that was sorry, don't answer.
Yeah, it's like,
of the curriculum committee, of the 14 members. I'm sure not all 14 attended, and you had a solid core of about how many that were really driving this. I'm just curious. That's my question.
The policy revision?
No, it's just a question of the number.
How?
So there's been 14, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, all 14 are not going to show up to all the meetings.
Right.
That hasn't happened. It's usually a solid core driving work with, and I just want your feedback on how you felt that worked with that number.
It would be great to have 14 members at the table each time. What I saw happen, and I think this is part of, Lisa wasn't able to be here today, but I think part of the conversation was we need more than 7 to be consistent membership. So, and to be good advisors to the board, I think we need that diversity of opinion. I agree with that. Diversity.
Yeah, I would kind of respond similarly to your question. It seems like the whole point of the policy as written, which is that 12 is an extreme edge, but imagine we have 9 openings this time and there's 10 applicants and we're struggling on the last one. I don't think there's any reason to struggle on that last one, because give you the problem of having too many people qualified and actively working. That should be the smallest problem. And in fact, we have 9 this time just as a function of, say, random, but as you get years experience with qualified people and an image of what you want to do next time, it's easy for you to say, hey, next year we could use voting for this number was great, or everyone's coming back.
And we're hoping that those members whose term is up would be interested in serving again, so it should be easy to roll over. I just wanted to add to that Zaida and Val have helped us post the application in Spanish and English, and that the new administrative assistant supporting me as the secretary to the committee and I are both bilingual, so what we're trying to do is make sure that all the structures are in place for you guys to have a more diverse linguistic group of candidates too. So if you know folks in the community who speak other languages or have some other difficulty accessing the application process, let us know, because we'll bend the rules and support them in writing or whatever it is that they need help with. So I appreciate that value of the board in trying to engage diverse citizens. And appreciate your thought about how to make that happen.
And I just wanted to echo what Janine said. I think there is a value of the application in that people who don't know one of the 7 of us that can be their entrance to the school district. And I'm remembering to the budget committee, there's a young man who had a preschooler who was looking for entry into the school district to start starting volunteerism and learning more about the school district, but he didn't know any of us, and so I think that does help. And I think even though we have individual appointees, it was still the will of the board of someone, because you still had to be approved. So even though, like if you appointed somebody, it might not have gone through. And I think everybody honors diversity enough that people's appointments have always been respected. That's what I'm looking for. So I think that's still it. Like I would still encourage the people who I would have asked the board to be appointee to still apply. If I thought they were about to candidate. Any other comments?
So Travis's answer to Adriana about the high-functioning board, is that what I heard? You said
No.
You'll have to look at my Facebook page.
What were your answer to my friend's request?
I don't have one. Sorry.
So it's been moved by Monty and seconded by Eric to approve the revisions to policy IFF. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next one is Saida. Approve revisions to policy GBEBA.
Good afternoon. At the last board session, we brought forward proposed revisions to policy GBEDA, which is the drug and alcohol testing policy for transportation personnel. We included the recommended language that OSBA brought forward, and at this time I'm here to answer any questions. We had a conversation with Janine yesterday briefly. She came forward, but we didn't receive any other questions, so are there any questions?
Why don't we start with a motion on this one? Sometimes it's hard to put questions and comments separate.
I make a motion to approve revisions to policy GBEDA, drug and alcohol testing transportation personnel.
And I'll second that.
Perfect. Questions or comments?
I don't know if you want me to share. What I had asked was, I kind of was curious about a couple things. I was curious about how does a medical marijuana card play into this? So that if someone says I'm a card-carrying member, and you can test me and I'll be positive, but it's because I smoked 3 days ago, how does that work? Do they have protection in that way? And so,
what we discussed was that if we witness or see an employee under the influence, there is a zero tolerance, and so they would go through the same process as if they weren't a card-carrying member. And those protections, it's OMMA, so it's the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. It doesn't supersede the work laws that we have.
And that was great because you brought up 2 points. I asked specifically about transportation in that question, but then I asked the broader question of what's our policy when we're looking at all employees. I know with my husband's company, they just have a no tolerance because there's a lot of heavy machinery and whatnot around. But I wondered how the medical marijuana played into that. And I'm glad to hear that because, on the news recently, they showed some daycare workers that were smoking while kids were inside the house, and they said, but I got a card. And so now they're having to make sure and look at and see where they're at with protections of that, because it's
Yeah, and we've addressed this issue in HR with individuals that are taking prescription drugs and abusing those prescription drugs and are on campus and are in our schools and on our premises, and so we would treat it like any other drug.
Any other questions or comments? Sure.
I'm not sure I understood the answer to Janine's original point. So if someone has the medical marijuana card and they smoked marijuana 3 days ago when they were on vacation, now they're back at school and they're not exhibiting any, intoxicated conduct, but you have this drug testing and it shows they're positive for marijuana. Does that mean that they're zero tolerance too?
If there's a transportation policy, there is zero tolerance. We don't randomly test our employees that are not transportation or don't utilize heavy machinery.
Just to clarify then, so that means someone would have to make a judgment call and say, I think you're impaired, and then they get tested.
Correct.
for everyone.
Okay.
Right, and normally it's the administrator, the supervisor, or it may be an employee that comes to the administrator or the supervisor, and then they approach the employee and they have to witness it. That also occurs where people have consumed alcohol, and if we smell it on them, that's very similar. So they would go through the same process.
I guess my only concern there is that I know that this is something that the police have, the unions have brought up, is that with the difference in alcohol, you can tell they're drunk by doing a simple breathalyzer now. But the marijuana is in your system for several days, whether or not you're impaired. So are we then opening ourselves up for, well, their lawyer says they're innocent, and how do we defend against that sort of thing? I understand why we have a zero tolerance policy. I completely understand and support that. I'm just curious where you draw that line. How do you navigate those, what seems to be troubled waters?
I think the line's been drawn with no tolerance.
We would have to witness it. Honestly, I mean, if you were to go to any business right now and say, and there are individuals, I'm sure, in companies all over the state of Oregon that may have consumed marijuana within the last couple of days, but they're coming to work and they're fully functioning. And so those employees are protected by the same laws. Unless we witness it, unless they show visible signs of concern, it's out of our hands.
That's for transportation.
Except for transportation. So we're talking about all employees except for transportation and facilities. We have employees in facilities that use machinery that require them to be randomly drug tested.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments? So it's been moved by Adriana and seconded by Glenn to approve the revisions to policy GBEDA. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, ladies. Next is approved revisions to policy ABA. Donna. I see your question.
So last time I was here, we brought forward, I've got two policies right now. I think the first one is public records, KDA. Have not received any input or any questions from anybody on this one. It's a slight change, just making sure that we don't release personal email addresses or contact information for employees, but that we will, under public law, public information requests, release district-assigned email addresses.
You're looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommended revisions to policy KBA, public records.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Yeah, Janine?
So, but if someone suspects, I'm just curious how that works. If someone suspects that I'm conducting business out on my personal, you may not release, but they have the right to. How does that work?
So you mean you're conducting
from my own
HSD business on your personal?
Yeah.
The only way that would really come into play is if there were a lawsuit or some sort of court filing where a lawyer might subpoena all of those public. Okay. And if they believe that you have done this and they've got reasonable suspicion, then they could subpoena your personal computer or your phone or things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I was hypothetically speaking.
Moved by, is it Glenn? Yes, thank you. Seconded by Janine to approve the revisions to policy KBA. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And Dawn has the next one. And board members, this is the one we also have a public audience comment on as well. So I'll have Dawn go first and then we'll do audience.
So let me jump in there real quick because I was working a question from Eric.
Okay.
John may not be aware of the on the second page of policy, page 33. We had a request to take a look at the term person, where it says any person taking, disseminating, transferring otherwise illegal images or photographs. The question was, and Eric might be able to explain it better, but can we get more specific with the term person so that it doesn't, a child is caught doing something inappropriate? Would we necessarily turn them in? Our recommendation is after having a conversation with legal counsel, and I spoke with Eric about, is that anything that is otherwise illegal we would want to report that to an appropriate agency. Doesn't necessarily need to be the police, but as mandatory reporters, that's something that we don't necessarily have discretion on. However, we did have our attorney add the language as required by law or as deemed appropriate by the administration. So there is some added language to add some some discretion, but if it's illegal, we have to report it.
Yeah, so can I just clarify, what motivated me to ask the question was that you might have read in the last year or two reports about sexting scandals, right, where a 14-year-old, right, sends, thinks it'll be funny to send a picture of his butt, let's say. Technically, he's producing child pornography, which is a really serious federal crime, right, and there have been cases where young teenagers who didn't know, the seriousness of what they were doing, then had this reported to the police, and now they're on trial as adults and could be labeled a sex offender for the rest of their life. So the question I asked was, could we, in the case where, this is a young student who's doing this, can we leave some discretion in the hands of the principal and not automatically make it a federal case? Now, the answer that Steve got from the lawyer was that actually we're mandatory reporters in this case under the law, so we actually don't have that discretion. But at least by adding that phrase, as required by law, we're at least leaving open that if the law changes, we can give our principals that level of discretion.
Clarifying question, because the policy title says staff. So does that also help us in that? It doesn't say student.
Yeah, but the word in the sentence here is person, not just staff. So that's what I was worried about.
The big deal as we were looking, I understand the point completely. Having been a principal, I'm still going to, if I have a question as an administrator, as a staff member, the first conversation I'm going to have is either with DHS or my SRO or somebody that can guide me. So I don't want ever a staff member to say, you know what, I think it's fine, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
They'll lose their license, potentially. So we just want to make sure the policy doesn't give them a feeling of flexibility when there really isn't any.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with that with an exclamation point. Maybe two.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask Devin to come up. And Devin, since you are doing this officially different, go ahead and come on up. I'm just going to read the legalities. Public participation in board meetings is governed by policy BBBH. Patrons may comment on specific agenda items at the beginning of the meeting or at the discretion of the board chair. They may be deferred to the time items before the board is stated in the agenda. Comments about non-agenda items will be heard during audience time at the beginning. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. And so Devin wanted to provide testimony on this policy. Devin, you can state your name and your address for the record. Okay.
So my name is Devin Hunter. I live at 1410 Northwest 7th Avenue in Hillsboro, Oregon. I'm coming to talk about this policy for personal electronic devices as it relates to staff. There's a sentence in there that states staff may not post images of district facilities, staff, students, volunteers, or parents without authorizations from a person with authority to grant such a release. The key word in there is district facilities, and I feel like my reading of it is that it's overly broad because a staff member could take a picture of an empty classroom with nobody in it, with no confidential information, no students, nobody, and be in violation of this policy. This really comes into effect if they're attending a sports event with their own student that is an athlete and they're taking a picture of their student. Sure, they may have the authorization to post on Facebook a picture of their student doing what they're doing in athletics, but they don't necessarily have the authorization to have the district facilities unless beforehand they say you may post pictures of Facebook of this facilities. So I don't think it's a big deal. I don't really think that any principal would really realistically go to a staff member and say, well, you took a picture of an empty room, so we're going to bring you up in violation of this policy. But just because a policy is not enforced doesn't mean it's not a violation of policy. The second piece is that there was a note in there about the intent to not, that this policy is not intended to interfere with labor activities. This is more going back to that district facilities piece, because if someone takes let's say a staff member, there's some sort of labor rally outside of a district facility, and they take a picture and they post it on Facebook and say, hey, we were at this thing talking about this particular issue. How do you figure out the approval for all that? I would assume that the people attending would be approved to do it, or you approve that by attending, you are giving your approval, but if you're outside of the school, how does that work? So I'm really concerned that without specific language in there protecting labor-related activities, that this policy could then be turned around by someone to target union members who are trying to raise awareness about a particular issue. So that's all I got. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. So board members, I'd be looking for a motion and then we can do questions and comments.
I'll make a motion that we approve the revision to policy GCAB, personal communication devices and social media dash.
Second.
Okay, questions or comments? Yeah, Janine.
I had some questions and I contacted Dawn and had a conversation because I too was looking at more specific comments, and I wrote in there, I was even like, how can we write what's appropriate use, blah, 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 because what my appropriate is might not be appropriate for that person. And I just was like, I was wordsmithing it probably to an extent. I wondered, I hear that, but I wonder if the suggestion, if there's a possibility, if you put something like Steve was suggesting after that part that Eric was suggesting, can you put something about staff? I don't know how you worded it, but is that a possibility or is that necessary? I think the only thing I could think of, devil's advocate, is if a staff member was going through an empty school and taking a bunch of pictures and you didn't exactly know what intent that was for, here's the exit, here's a door, here's a this, here's a that. And I don't know, devil's advocate, so you have to be.
So in listening to Devin's comments and going back to our conversation yesterday, some of this I would think the very specifics, because again, as we mentioned earlier, in other board policies that we've talked about, is trying to be broad enough that we have room to operate our district under, and those specific where we need to get really detailed or we need to be able to find some of that flexibility would be in how we write the AR. So that we would include an appropriate AR that talks about how staff do not need to get prior permission for taking pictures of their own student at a school-sponsored event prior to posting on Facebook along these guidelines. I think we can address those things. Same with union issues, same with staff personnel out in front of the building. I think we can handle all of those and appropriate in that targeted AR.
I appreciate that comment when you said that. Exactly.
So I just want to say that, yeah, I would want that as well, because I hadn't thought of your issue before, but it really struck me as like, oh, I guess that could be a problem. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
So we've had involved teachers taking pictures of the decorations in their room, or I don't know, for any organizational reason that they want to. We just took a picture of the whiteboard to share notes or something to what. Is that all AR content?
That could all be AR content, but much like it says, without prior approval of somebody with authority to do that we also didn't define in the board policy what that approval must look like. So again, that could be covered in AR. It could be as simple as, hey, can I take pictures of my classroom from the principal, and they have that authority to grant that. So we can define that in the AR. And also the flexibility for classroom teachers not to have to go and ask every time they're going to take a picture of the classroom.
Very good point, David. Thank you. And it just reminds me of the right brain thing we did over at WLG. As the Optimist Club, we took pictures of the meeting. We didn't have permission for that. So, very good point.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so it has been moved by Glenn and seconded by Eric to approve revisions to policy GCAB. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're going to move into some reports and discussion. And Mike's going to present about some information about GainShare, and then I have two audience members who'd like to speak on it. And then we'll move forward.
Very good, thank you. So in mid-July, there was an announcement made by the county and the city that there's more money available through GainShare, and both the city of Hillsboro and Washington County made the decision to gift half of that money, $3 million, to the Washington County schools. What that means for the Hillsboro School District is an additional $720,000 that is available to us, thanks to the city and the county. We've had a few little discussions on this, and we shared some ideas a month or so ago, and I'd like to bring a recommendation as to how we would spend that money. The recommendation would be that we are still 1 calendar day short of a full school year like we had before we started our reduction process 5 or 6 years ago. And so the recommendation would be that we spend $466,000 of the $728,000 for adding back a day for an instructional day. So that would be the first recommendation, $466,000 for that. That would leave $262,000 for additional FTE. And that FTE would be a combination that would be used to address we refer to them as the hotspots. As we get enrollment rolling in here in the next couple of weeks, we know that we're going to have class sizes that are greater than the 26 that we targeted for kindergarten, the 27 that we targeted for grades 1 through 2, and the 29 for grades 3 through 12. While we won't be able to address every spot that's above that, we know that there's going to be particular ones that are of greater concern. This would allow us to have a pool of money that we could hire both classified and licensed folks to address those needs. An example I think of is if we spent a lot of time thinking about our kindergarten numbers and what does that mean, and we landed on 26 to 1 would be our target. If we get a kindergarten class of 34, that's not enough kids probably to have a whole other teacher, but maybe we could put a half-time instructional assistant in there and address some of those needs. So we would have that additional money, the $246,000 or the $262,000 to spend on class size here in the next couple of weeks. So that would be the recommendation.
I'm going to grab comments from audience. Next question, so that way you can question and comment on all the feedback we heard. So the first one is Charlotte. Hi. Yeah, come on up. And the same thing, I'll have you go ahead and do your name and address. And the 3-minute timer is so much fun.
Okay, my name is Charlotte Schuster, and I'm a concerned citizen. My address at home is 2345 Southeast Tanager Circle in Hillsboro. And I want to thank you for coming up with putting in that one missed day, because I came actually to promote the fact that our students need that one day, that our staff is ready, willing, and able to bring our students that extra day. Anytime that we can get more kids in classrooms with instruction, the better for them. And I came here to say, please put that day back. And it sounds like it's top priority, and that just gladdens my heart. And I want to thank you very much for that. That's exactly what I came here to say. So you've already appeased me. and hopefully all these lovely people in the morning. One day, you see, it's just one day, but it's one amazing day, right? It might be that day of discovery for that one student. So I'm glad that your top priority was the kids first. Thank you for that.
Let's give her 10 minutes to talk.
Thank you.
She probably thinks we're high.
Yeah. Like, you didn't ask me what I think of awards.
Maureen, can you come up?
Hi, Maureen Barnhart, Hillsboro Education Association, 20450 Northwest Amberwood Drive, Suite 125, Beaverton, but in the Hillsboro School District, 97006. Don't tell BEA that we're in I want to give you a little bit of a history of the budget reduction days. Negotiating budget reduction days has been controversial among local education associations, and for a long time, we at Hillsboro and any other districts who have promoted budget reduction days have been told that we need to stick together and say, we're sorry you don't have enough money, but we have a contract, and so it's your problem. But in Hillsboro and some other districts, we saw the benefit of a budget reduction day as something that would, well, spread the pain around, but that it would be a way to maintain our programs and a way to maintain our staff, because we feared if we gave those up, we would lose them, and a way to make our need for adequate public education funding public to the people, to the public. Sorry, that's very redundant. So we had to resist our other local associations, but we thought it was worth it. We're glad we did it, but we didn't expect them to go on this long. And so with the additional gain share money, it's time to restore our school year. We owe that to our families. We owe them the whole year that they're entitled to, and it should be recognized that our employees are entitled to what we've negotiated. We're in danger of falling farther behind in recruiting and retaining the staff we need when the salary schedule we negotiated is not met due to the budget reduction days. Our members are frustrated and don't understand why the limited agreement has not been respected. It was an agreement made under the belief that we would be made whole as soon as the financial picture improved. And I know that it hasn't improved completely. I will say that the last round when we had more money, I still have a lot of members who felt that we should have restored the budget reduction day before we reduced class sizes, but the majority did appreciate the reduction of class sizes. Even staff committed to Hillsboro School District programs to the extent that they have not moved to better paying districts are not going to feel compelled to stay if they're not respected and have that day returned. It's one more opportunity for contact with our students. It's more time for what we already know will be lengthy tests. It's more time to reflect on how our practice improves student learning or should be reconsidered. The OEA and Hillsboro are promoting our own motto that is the schools Hillsboro students deserve. So when we're offering the schools that Hillsboro students deserve, then we can continue to be proud to be HSD. I also kind of expected HCU to talk about the remaining money to be used toward bringing classified staff back, especially during the in-service days, so that we can be unified in how we work together for push-in for our students, our targeted groups of students. So I sent an email last week. I'm just changing that a little bit at the end. But, and thank you, Mr. Miller, for asking that question.
Thank you, Mommy. So we'll be looking to get questions from it.
All right, so my question was centered around the classified hours. Just I did actually answer three, and we had a conversation there. And I appreciate these recommendations, and I'm wholeheartedly in support of them. On the classified hours, collaboration between the different groups. So, because you mentioned like instructional coaches, are you
Instructional assistants?
Assistants. Will there be hours, and I don't know if it's hours, minutes, whatever it is, allocated so that the staff can work together, besides just,
so the way,
hotspots?
Yeah, the way that we accomplished that, I won't say accomplished, we took a step towards improving that was, as we went through the budgeting process, we allocated an additional $200,000 that was put into the building funds so that principals could, at their discretion, have people back and do some planning with teachers, do some professional development, those types of things. So we did add $200,000 back this last spring. The reason that I didn't recommend that we do the in-service week is that we're 2 weeks away from that. And I don't think that well, a couple things. We're just now, Saide and Debbie are doing the work to determine which groups would be most beneficial to add calendar days to first. And then just the fact that we're within a couple weeks of that happening. I just don't think we could get everybody back if we did land on the correct group. So this way, it allows us to retain some flexibility. I still believe that there will be significant money spent on additional classified hours out of that remaining $262,000, but it also gives us some flexibility if we need a whole teacher somewhere.
I too think you're the priority. I'm definitely supporting the priority in maintaining the entire year. The only couple of things. Okay, so I think just only to address an extra staff person to address class size to me might be of concern, and maybe it's not only class size, but I might think that we might have a huge class size of 36 in a school that's a level 4 or 5 school. Just sharing that as we look at our goals. I don't know if maybe you also want to consider looking at this extra staff pool to be put in areas or to work, and even classified, because by golly, I've seen some amazing classified assistants do small group inclusive teaching. in the classroom. And I just want to be able to have that to be looked at, especially as Monty and we're looking at goals. And so do we just want to respond to the number? Which I know that that's not what's happening, just, oh, we got a good number here. But I just want to have that conversation that we're going to respond to, getting to where we need to be, as Monty said, the world-class, school system.
Yeah, that's a good comment, and that is part of our process.
Okay.
I can guarantee you in 3 weeks, Debbie and I will be sitting in her office, and we're going to be looking at those areas that have more students than we predicted for whatever reason. We will not be able to fix every one of them.
Yeah, of course.
And so we will have to prioritize, and highly impacted schools, that will be part of the priority.
Okay, the only thing is also I don't know, Hans Strack, let's say a principal says, you know what, I may not need a district pool teacher, but I'm running short on my classified assistant hours, and I would like to be able to, bring this classified person up to, 7 hours so that they can lead the small group instruction at 4 of my classrooms. Is that going, if they're running out of their hours, you know what I mean? Because we did give, okay.
Yeah, they can do that. Those hours are at their discretion.
Okay, but if they need it, well, that's fine. That's okay. You guys, I don't know.
And we work with Dale and Matt quite a bit when we're looking at the enrollment, and Mike and I and Sadie, and figure out kind of what's the best way to approach this. Yeah.
All right, Jenny, two parts. I called Michael Brown, the manager of Hillsboro, just a side note of this, to have a discussion because I had some questions, comments concerns regarding the SIP agreements as well as gain sharing. And I highly recommend that if anybody has any, they really need to have a deeper understanding. It was a wonderful conversation. It was very thorough. It is more, going about it specifically with SIP agreements, more money comes back to the local district that way. I love the idea that if you're making agreements in your local business, that money is coming back locally to you in your area. We actually, if you look at a state school fund and what we would have received if had that money gone, we do receive quite a difference. There's actually a flyer here that indicates that. And I told him, I was very honest with him, my concern was that it is set up as a gift. It's not something that is, so it's deciding upon their groups of how much money, what money will come to the district. That part makes me a little uneasy. But he has assured me that within their strategic planning of this part, that this is a high priority for them. And I truly believe and value the partnership that we have with the city. I also want to comment that I do appreciate and value the partnership that we have with our unions. I know the agreements and I know what it is to be in the room when we're having those discussions on union contracts. And the word's escaping me, but what you have done to come during these financial issues and problems that we've had for so many years, what has come to the table as having us be able to get where we are today. There was concessions that were made, and incredibly appreciative for that. I know the idea is, there is that idea that restoring that calendar 100%, that is a wonderful thing to say, that we are not losing any days in our district because of this investment in our schools. That's a fantastic. I was surprised that when I had conversations with teachers, overwhelmingly, every single teacher asked me not to consider the day. They said that when you talk about the achievement gap, when you talk about closing that gap, when you talk about investments in education, they were saying, look at the big picture and not the smaller one, and look at what we can make a difference with how many staff we could help and bring into the schools to make our classrooms smaller, to make those targeted areas easier. Because some of our teachers are looking at, 36 students, especially the one, I spoke to one at Kotama, where one year she was at 20-something, and one year now she's looking at 36. And so there's a big difference. So I was really surprised that overwhelmingly every single one of those teachers said, no, if you're asking me, I would tell you not the day. And they were saying make investments to help us in the classroom because we're not going to see that. So I'm just sharing that. I understand the idea, and I really can respect the fact that we're saying we're going to restore our calendar, because Oregon has one of the shortest school year in the nation. Third shortest, I believe we're still at. And that's not something to be proud of. That's something to be ashamed of. But when we're coming to this situation, I'm thinking that for moving forward, let's look at investing in that full calendar. My concern is that because of this, I want to respect the teachers that I heard from who tell me, and they were all teachers. I speak to Classified, but they were all saying, let's make a difference in that classroom, and let's put more assistants, more teachers, more FTE to help us reduce that workload. So that's my school.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's definitely a balancing act there. If we were to take that $700,000 and distribute it across the district, we would be reducing class size by 0.4 per class. So,
but I'm saying maybe the target that you're looking for.
And the other thing I was going to say is the other thing that makes it difficult is the time of year that we're at right now. If you were to go to a high school principal and say, you've got one additional FTE or two additional FTE, they would find a way to use it for sure. But it would be major upheaval at this point in the year. We do the same with elementary teachers. My concern with doing that is that it's not as efficient as we would like it to be at this point in the year. For example, if you take an elementary school and you say you've got an additional FTE now, you also have to think about adding additional PE and additional music as well. And before long, it gets so diluted that you're not getting that same bang for the buck that we would hope for. And because I believe that it's a balancing act that we have to strike, I think getting our full year back would be our priority at this point in the school year.
Point of order, are we going to have a motion?
No, we're just discussion.
Yeah. Aaron?
Oh, yeah, so Mike, I'm not sure you properly answered Janine's point, really, because I think she had a good one, and that is, she's not talking about making these generalized FTE increases. She's really talking about putting more money in your second two bullet points here than in your first one, right? And I think that is a relatively convincing argument in the sense that, when I ask the question, will this make a big difference in an individual student's life, right? These things about, creating these targeted additional staffing in areas that need them, I think those actually will make a really big difference for those impacted students. The one day across the board, I really don't think any student is going to have a significantly improved educational experience this year because of that one additional day, right? I think people will hardly notice it. It'll kind of be in the noise. Right, and so this really is this question, especially when we have two, level 1 schools that we're targeting to try to improve things like that. Maybe we should consider taking all this gain share money and really putting into those two targeted things that you've identified, rather than this sort of general diluted day across the district.
I guess I would, and it's a board decision.
Yes.
This is my recommendation. My response to that would be, at what point does the day matter? If we had enough money to add 10 days, would that matter? Or 9 days? Does 8 not matter? I mean, my thought is that every good day of instruction matters to a kid. So that's why the recommendation.
I mean, I would ask, what evidence do we have that those individual days make a big difference?
What evidence do we have that good instruction?
Well, no, that when you're going to school for 175 days, going to 176 instead will significantly increase your achievement. Right? I think that's a question we have to ask. I mean,
I'm going to grab folks who haven't spoken yet, so I'm going to go Wayne and then Monty.
No, I tend to agree in general that there weren't the fact that we have a contractual obligation that says, okay, we plan on working this number of days. And because that was a good thing to do, and we all collectively agreed to that, and under extenuating circumstances for years, we haven't been able to achieve that. I think reestablishing that baseline is a good thing. Because I'm worried about the comments that Janine was reflecting from some people. You could take that to an extreme to say, well, those really were the good things. We really should just start investing on the point of things. You can start just cutting days because a day doesn't matter that much, and so add it to this. Another day doesn't matter that much, and so add it to this. And maybe we could argue this point if we had a collective baseline. I mean, if we were at full days and then we have another $1 million bucks show up, then there'd be a good argument to say maybe it is another day. Would another day be good because, or maybe I don't know. Or 1 day instead of 5 for a week, but at least then you can start talking about whether days matter more than pointed features. But it just seems like getting out from under this cloud that we live under that is some failing to achieve the base level of educational content that we've committed to. Prevents us from really attacking the other problems, right? Like get out from under that cloud permanently and then go after the targeted points that really make a big difference.
Okay.
And I agree with Eric. That's my focal point is let's prioritize spending. But at the same time, over the last 5 years, we've asked our unions to work with us, and they've come forward and given up those days. And we have not specifically said we'll give back those days, but I think it was implied that we would give those days back because they were giving them up to get us through those tough times. And I think it's just right that we would give those days.
Before I guys have your comments, I just want to ask you. I think the day also does something else in that whole notion of world-class school system. Why do people choose Hillsboro over out of our outlying areas? How do we best support those companies in the city and the county who have given us this money? I don't want to be a school district anymore that doesn't have a full school year when the neighbors around me do. And that's something when we're talking about, I'm going to come and move to this community and I'm going to work for Intel, but I'm going to live in Bethany because they have a full school year. And so I think that's the piece that I want of a full school year. And I think every day has value, whether you learn something that you're tested on or not. Whether you come there and you got breakfast that day, or you built a relationship with a friend, or you learned a life skill. My children are learning more being in that setting than they are in my house. And I'm a pretty connected parent. So there is value in every single day, in addition to being respectful to our unions who have sacrificed for a very long time, and I think in good faith. I think I love the cost effectiveness of the second pool of money, that it could be a FTE, it could be classified, that there's flexibility. I feel like that's very cost effective in being good stewards of money. And I want to thank, I see the City Council President in our audience. Just thank again the city and the county, because this is a good problem for us to have, and to have this discussion about how do we spend extra money. I could have this conversation for days. That's a good discussion to be worried about.
I'll grab some thoughts. This is the last thing I wanted to share. I really like how you said that we got to get out of this cloud first, because I really wrestled with this one, in all honesty. I really did. And I did speak to teachers. My pool was very limited from all of our schools that are, having challenges, and they all agreed they would like to see the money go into technology and in the classroom and that sort of thing. I also talked to parents. I got a good scolding from a good parent of mine, like, how dare I even think of considering put all the money there without restoring the day? And I had to really, look at that. I had to look at my role as a member of this board in promoting, the democracy of public education, the whole bit. So I did. That's why I just felt that the first thing we have to do is put that day back. We got that puzzle piece missing. And before we continue to say, hey, do we really like this puzzle piece? Or do we like this puzzle? Or are we happy with our work? We have to have the puzzle complete. And that's kind of how I looked at it, is that, we can't go on with that missing piece. And the last thing I'm going to say is I spoke to someone who had no children. And they also wanted the restored day as well. And basically said, as a board member, you owe it to all your constituents, because this is taxpayer dollar, that's coming back, and regardless of what. So even my personal opinion aside, this is one of them that where I have to really put my board hat on, and I am so excited. And that's why I brought up the issue that let's not look at the number, let's look at beyond that, because I know that the way we're going and the direction we're going as a district, I fully trust that we are going to leave nothing uncovered. But right now, we do need that piece to finish our puzzle.
Any other?
Just in terms of the next steps. So I too love that we're having a debate over more teachers.
As a very highly functioning board.
It's a great problem to have. And when you see a city councilor or you see a county commissioner, make sure you thank them. If we go the day route, this will be 4 days we've added back due to gain share, in addition to the teachers and classified staff that we'd be able to hire. So make sure you thank them. And I understand your gift concern, but we do have a great history with our city that would indicate that will continue.
And be reassured of that.
Yeah. So great thanks to the city and to the county. So our next steps is we'll need to vote on this next meeting, and vote or appropriate. Tell me what.
Well, both. We'll appropriate the money, and we'll appropriate it where you've told us you want it. So, that would be the next step.
And you have enough head nods to start conversations to modify, if it's the day to modify the contract or that sort of thing?
What we'll bring back next time is a modified calendar as well. I can tell you that we've started conversations around that, and it's looking like that added back day would come at the end of the year as opposed to the Thanksgiving time. Remember, we restored, due to gain share money this last time, we restored the day before spring break. So this would occur at the end of the year, which would put the students' last day on Friday.
Except for seniors who are still missing that day.
Yeah, because graduation days have already been, graduation.
We'll just work them extra hard before they leave us, right? I'm going to work mine extra hard, right, and crack the whip.
All right, thank you.
All right, so next is first reading of policy GCL, GDL. Debbie.
Thank you. This policy addresses staff development for our licensed staff, which includes our administrators and our teachers. And it's prompted by TSP, a change in TSPC, which is Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, which is a licensing agency for our licensed staff. And it's basically aligning professional development standards with national standards for both teachers and administrators. And so as you can see, we're proposing retaining the first introductory sentence and then basically deleting the rest of our current policy and going with the OSBA recommended language here. And basically, it includes some language addressing accessibility to PD. It's an ADA statement that's included in there. And it just reiterates that the responsibility for renewing your licenses and meeting those standards for TSBC rests with the licensed employee.
Okay, does anyone have questions for Debbie? Yeah.
Teacher Standards and Practice Commission, is that a state?
It's a state licensing organization. Yes, that's where all of us who have licenses have to go
So
through.
you're required then to make these changes, correct?
Yes, this is one of the required changes.
Unfunded mandate?
Yes. Honestly, though, when you look at the changes with this, it better aligns with what we're actually doing because it talks about the PD does not have to only support teachers renewing their teaching licenses. It talks about aligning PD with strategic plan. And so it really better opens it up for us in policy to really do what we need to be doing as we're moving forward with our strategic plan.
Any other questions? So if you have questions or comments during the review period, Debbie's your gal.
Thank you.
And Adam is to give us the financial report.
Yeah, I want to point out a couple of things in the financial report. First of all, this is our first audit period with our new auditors, Grove Mueller-Schlank. They were in the office for a couple of days in June. We are in the process of pulling everything together from the 13-14 school year for their on-site visit coming up in October. Another big thing happening in the business office right now is we're preparing for open enrollment through the Oregon Education Benefits Board. Hoping that goes smoothly. We've been doing a lot of work. Our benefits folks have been putting in lots of hours, and they will be putting in lots of hours to make sure that all our employees get enrolled in the proper benefit plans. Third thing is we are going to be opening up web stores at each of our secondary schools this fall, which means that it will be tied in with Synergy so that secondary parents can go online and pay their student fees via credit card. So we're really excited about that. Michelle and her team have been working really hard on that. And speaking with Michelle and Casey and Lauren and Cindy, I was gone for 3 weeks. Missed a board meeting and came back to things running really smoothly, and I really appreciate all the work they did. So thank you guys.
We liked having Michelle at the grown-up table.
Yes.
We took good care of her.
Good. So that's all I had.
Questions, Glenn?
Right, so on these web stores and the credit card fees and whatnot, I remember several years ago I was in discussions, before I was on the board, I was with a band booster thing. We were thinking about using the district's credit card, processing thing. And one of the things they told us at that time was it was fairly expensive. And the reason why we didn't do it was because, that compared to like a commercial rate, it was almost like double or something crazy like that. Is that still the case that it cost us, more money, or Michelle? Than it would, And I never really understood the reasons for that.
No, there is a 3.75% convenience fee that folks will pay when they choose to pay that way. They can still send a check or cash or anything. I mean, old school's still going on. So it is a convenience fee. It helps us offset our costs for having the web store and having the support that we need from Blueberry, our company.
So unlike a regular credit card transaction in the store, you're actually having to pay like it was a debit card at a gas station kind of deal, like the 25-cent fee thrown on there or whatever. So it doesn't cost the district anymore, it just costs the parents more.
Like on my school bus, you have to pay that.
Yeah.
For donations, right?
Yeah, for our district web store, I'm pretty excited about it, but it's not live just yet. Beth and they're going to work on a rollout for that. But it's primarily so that folks can donate to the district using a credit card. Erin tested it for us already.
I thought Erin was ready to break out her credit card. Let's go.
I tried. She did. So we are still working something out. We'll let you guys know when that goes live. But
so we can accept donations. We can also accept payment for building use.
Nice. For building use, any outstanding bills.
But the donations, we're going to absorb the fee for it. So that their whole donation.
Yeah, donations will be fee-free.
Before you open that door, now I'm curious on the donation part of it. Is it like, kind of like a donor's choose, like you'll have specific where people, or is it just a donation to the district and then how is that? Is it going to?
We've had it set up so that they enter the amount and then they also enter in text what the target is.
So they can say a specific school?
Right, and each of the secondary schools will have an item on their web store that's specific to donations. And we'll be piloting some elementary schools as well. So someone could go to the web store now, the district web store, when it's functional properly, and make a payment, $50 to Tobias. They just have to type it in there. So we're evolving.
Donation to Tobias?
Yeah, donation to Tobias.
So, and we can do that like down to the program level, like I want to support some kind of arts program at a particular school, and then it'll get the money we get to that program. Okay, cool.
I love anything that gets rid of the Backpack Express, right? Because I got the late notice, and then I had the 3 checks that my kid had in their backpack that never made it to the bookkeeper. So totally worth the convenience fee. Just put my kids under the bus right in front of everybody, right? That's awesome. How you think I'm talking about Lucas? I know. If the board, since we are at 425, if we could I would love to entertain a motion that would move items C and D from our work session. Don just walked out of the room.
No, he's coming back.
Perfect. A motion to amend our agenda and move those two items, the superintendent's committee opportunities and Don's presentation from Teamworks to Google. We can tuck that in right now, is what I'd like to do.
We still have.
Yeah, we do. I'm going to grab these because I think they'll be, or actually, if someone wants to make a motion, you can choose where you put them. You can put them here or at the end. How's that sound? I'll give you flexibility, but I would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve those, to add those to items D and E. It makes more sense, I guess, for reports and discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Any comments? So moved by Janine, seconded by Monty to move items C and D and create items 7, D, and E. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Perfect, motion carries. Look at that, and like that, we're on time again. So, Mike.
So up on the screen there, you'll see the committee opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities. So go ahead and read through there. Well, actually, let me make sure you know what you know. You're familiar with the long-range planning. We do have bargaining for both employee groups this year. So there's 2 different opportunities there. A key communicator network, that's something that as part of the audit, Beth is, actually you had it going, but it'll be an opportunity. College and Career Pathways Steering Committee, graduation requirements. This year we're going to be looking at the policy that outlines the graduation requirements that we have and what various credits equals in terms of diplomas and that kind of thing. And we would like to have a subgroup take a look at that prior to opening it up to a big discussion. A school-based health center is an ongoing opportunity. Evaluation committee, technology input, audit committee, legislative priorities. It is a legislative year, so we've got plenty to talk about there. And then the equity curriculum piece that we talked about last time. So how would you like to go about this?
What about the online?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Alternative education.
Online?
So the HOA steering committee, we had it's no longer up there.
Was it, and that was separate from the technology?
Yes.
Yeah, those are 2 separate committees.
I just missed you.
What if you made that an alternative?
Yeah, that's a good idea, the alternative programs. I think the focus on just the online school was, the purpose was to be kind of like a site council, but we don't have any parents on there, and so we're kind of hoping to build more of a community-based support system for Linda. Not to remove anybody's involvement in it, but the point is to build a site council.
The work that we'll be doing to expand our alternative options, though, would be a nice fit there. That could definitely fit.
Do you want to talk about maybe time commitment or like frequency, like long-range planning is once a month for an hour and a half?
Something like that.
Yeah, and reading some materials outside of that. Yeah. Can you kind of walk through some of them? Because some of them are more time, obviously bargaining is way more time than thought committee. Yeah, Eric.
I'm just wondering, maybe rather than going through that one by one now, it makes sense to put together a spreadsheet or something. Email that to us and have us sort of, between meetings, email potential signups, and then you can sort of balance things, and we can discuss the next meeting, figure out, hey, if all of us wanted to join the audit committee this year, maybe a couple of us on to so much fun next year. But maybe that kind of thing can be more efficiently done, like offline.
It would be really helpful maybe to have an hours kind of expected
And could you also list like some of them that are ongoing, who's currently on them?
Sure.
Silly question, or
we are partnering with both grants.
So
a full bargain.
Use it for like this.
Yeah.
Right. So one other question though about this. Like I'm very happy to keep my committee assignments. They're great. The one thing that I did question was the audit committee, the usefulness of that committee, actually. And I'm sorry.
No, it's...
I mean, I was happy to do it. You know, it's incredibly important to audit and to feel, good about the books. But the honest truth of the matter is, they didn't include us in the audit in any way, other than the fact that we sat in a room and we got a briefing of what was in the budget and what they found. And, I put on my MBA hat and said, yeah, this is great. The minor little things, that's perfect, that's all aligned. But the reality is, what we were told was, okay, well, we would be the point of contact with the board. But the reality is, everybody talks to Adam anyway. So I felt it was kind of redundant, actually, for us to have that committee. I mean, I don't mind doing it. I'll certainly serve on it again, but I just thought it didn't really serve a lot of value, frankly.
Are we required to have it?
No, we're not. In fact, we have used it more as a training ground for new board members.
That's what you sold us on last year.
So I'm hoping as a new board member, it may be worthwhile. I agree. I don't think, especially in a year where we don't have any new board members, I don't know if there's
I'd
any
like
value.
it as a new board member, because I don't know all the same stuff not to know.
Understood. So, like I said, I'm happy to continue doing it. Now that we don't have any new board members, I'm not sure who's going to get anything out of it other than Monty. Talk to Monty.
Ginny?
I think it's a good idea to think about the new board members as maybe coming up with a one-pager of these are the, you should be part of an audit committee or whatnot. But just because it's a good step into the position to have a little look. But I don't necessarily know if it's as in agreement with that if it needs to be now, because it's just not necessary. I was wondering along the lines of, I like Eric's idea about just putting it on a spreadsheet and whatnot, or a Google Doc,
There you go.
and then where we could sign, have a more interactive to be able to put our name on there. You could say how many you're really looking for that position and the time commitment. And just because you want 2 people and 3 people, the first 2 people sign up for long range, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a bit. I think that we should consider that, because I think that should maybe then someone say, you know what, I've been on the long range and that's a new interest. I'd rather go into bargaining or doing something else. So I like the idea of putting it in the old Google Doc and working that way.
The only thing I would also suggest is if we do that spreadsheet, if we're going that direction, if there's a meeting that stands like every Tuesday at a certain time, just include that. So
if it's a set.
If it's a set standing meeting with an hour, however it is.
And school health centers too.
But by the way, so now, would you be open to changing the times of committee meetings depending on who signs up for them? Because I was thinking, like last year, I was kind of interested in school-based health center, but then Beth said, oh, we need like Tuesday mornings at 8, or it was some time that just totally didn't work with my work schedule. So I just said, okay, well, I guess I have to forget about that one.
And some of those would be flexible depending on what it is. So the school-based health center, for example, there's a lot of community members and other agencies that are involved with that. So that's a good example of one that maybe wouldn't be able to move.
So maybe mark that on the spreadsheet, just in some way, whether the meeting can or cannot be moved. So I probably wouldn't even bother signing up for that one, even though I'm interested based on what you just said. We should know stuff like that.
All right, we'll give Dr. Matthews.
Thank you.
Don, did it take long enough? You ready to go?
We'll see.
Okay.
I think we got most of it. Just give us a second while we switch over here and get this. And then 7 search. Should be. There we go. So what I'm showing you up there is I'm projecting my iPad, because what we're talking about is how I'm going to help you help make the transition. We're moving away from our SharePoint infrastructure. At the end of this year, June 30th of 2015, we're going to be turning that off. We're moving to Google Apps for Education as our intranet service provider, and one of the key pieces of that is the board update site. So we've gone through, I've worked with Val and I've worked with Lori and taken the documents and everything and created a new site based on Google infrastructure to support your needs for that. So what I'm going to show you today, which is one of the reasons we want to make sure everybody had their iPads with them, was how you can get access to that site. And moving forward, I believe Val, are we going going to start in September, we're going to start from this day forward, everything that as they come out, updates and new agendas and things like that will be put on the new site, on the Google sites and whatnot. So that's why you're seeing up here, you're seeing my iPad. And good, it's being responsive. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open up Safari on your iPad. I don't know if you can see, this did a wonky thing when the resolution changes. It pushed that up a little bit higher. I apologize for that. Once everybody's got it up, I'm going to ask you to go to a URL. It's a shortened URL. It's a bit.ly, so it's bit.ly/. bit.ly/HSD board. This is a site that only you all have access to, so you all can see it. It's like that. Go ahead and hit go, and it should take you to the new board of directors site, just like that. You're all getting in, everything's good. That's perfect.
You need permission. Because you need to be logged in on our HSD.
You need to be logged in with your HSD credentials. That was the one wild card.
Some of us might not have a Google account with our HSD address. I should just have.
You do. You actually all do. Your account, it generates, so you have a Google account with HSD credentials.
So that's what should be popping up as our HSD?
That's what you need to sign in. If it's asking for permissions or if you need to sign in again, you need to sign in with your account here. So Spelchen, I'm not sure where.
So do I add an account or do I have to? That's my home bus. Yeah, I want to be, that's not my Disney.
You might have to log out if you're not.
You're good. I haven't figured that out.
HSD.
Yep, just add account and we'll have the full email address, password, take the line.
And HSD credential.
There you go.
What was the
How do we turn that video? Here's what it resolves to.
Bit.ly.
Oh, bit. I forgot the I.
There you go.
Bit and then, and I had it in HSD and then /HSD. Oh, board?
HSD board, yeah.
She's just logging in. So the other thing I'm going to show you how to do if you don't know how to do this, once you're already there, everybody there, thumbs up if you've made it to the site. From sideways if you're still working on it.
I'm just working on it.
And if what I'm going to do is because I'm the last thing, I'm the gate between you and home. So those people that aren't quite there yet, I will stick around with you afterwards, those people who are ready. All I'm going to do is just show you, if you don't know how to make this an application that shows up on your desktop, I'm just going to show you that. So up there at the top, you can't see it, I'm so sorry. There should be, it looks like a piece of paper with an arrow going up through the top. It's the way you add a bookmark in Safari.
It's like a little book.
Yeah, and it should bring up that screen right up there. If you go down, one of them is add to home screen.
Right there. Actually, so because this one, yeah, on the screen.
Add it there.
And then yeah,
I'm still trying to get Safari.
You're in Chrome, aren't you?
No, I don't know.
You don't need Safari.
Yeah, you can Chrome. Open up.
Run on my phone afterwards.
Okay.
Do this in 5 minutes.
And I think bookmarks.
You want to hit add to home screen.
Squares up there,
If you select add to home screen,
and then you go to
it will
sites.
put the board of directors, it will look like an application on.
If I make a bookmark, will send to
Bookmark will work too when you're in Safari, you can just go back to it, but by me putting it to add to home screen, you'll notice it put it up there on one of my screens, that it's now just an application that I tapped. So everything will be there, you can go and all the board documents, everything's there right now. So for example, I'm going to just take you through it. If I click board meetings tab, it will bring up a folder that shows the board meetings. It's the same structure that you had before. It should look pretty familiar. So here's today's agenda. It opens that up in a new tab. And it shows all of the different things. If you've ever viewed any Google Apps documents on an iPad, there's 2 ways to view it. It by default comes to thumbnails like this. If I click over here in the top right-hand corner under Open and Drive, I can get its list view as well. And if I wanted to look at the board agenda for today, or here's the board packet, I will click on that and it'll bring that up, and I can just scroll through and read the board packet. The arrows at both sides will take you to the next document in the folder. It doesn't take you to the next page. You just scroll up and down, right? The arrows on the preview take you to the next document that's in that folder. So it's kind of a nice and easy way to browse it and get through it. So there we go. Val's going to start, and Val for this month duplicated everything on the Teamwork site as well as in the Google site. From here forward, she's just going to update things in the Google site.
Great.
Does this mean, so the end of the Microsoft cash, that we're not investing in Microsoft?
We'll still invest in Microsoft products, absolutely. We still purchase Office, but this SharePoint, this will be the last year we pay the SharePoint licensing. We will still have to pay for it for this year as we wean ourselves off of it.
This was just more cost effective? This was...
This is free.
Oh, free?
Yeah, free.
Okay, so now I understand that the whole thing about Google Fiber perhaps coming to a city near us.
Perhaps, if the city decides to jump through the hoops.
It's more residential.
It's targeted to residentials, you're right. And the way we get access to it as a school district would be, we wouldn't get all of our schools. Probably the more I've learned about it, the more it's targeted at schools, or excuse me, at residentials. Yeah. So like Henry might be a good place where, because they're right in the middle of some neighborhoods. So they might bring the fiber in there and we might be able to jump onto it. But like right here, there's houses around. So they're not going to bring it here. And there's still debate from what I'm hearing from the city leaders that are looking at it, whether they would even want to jump through the hoops that Google's presenting because of that exactly, because they're not going to address the school issue. That they may say, then we don't want, they may be trying to use it like a lever and fulcrum. So we'll see. Awesome. But even, we still know it's 5 years away anyway before they would even start to do anything. Okay? We're good? No problems? If you have any problems with this, just contact Val. I'm willing to help. I'm totally throwing her under the bus. Let me know if you have trouble. I will do whatever I can to help you out.
Thank you. Thank you for your flexibility and
absolutely.
Different time in our
Oh my gosh, really?
And your financials, stewardship?
I worked for 3 years. It's paid off.
Okay.
I've seen all those awards from Adam. I've been working under him.
Poor Adam. He's like the Newman of Seinfeld.
And so next would be HCU, HEA reports. Do you want to say anything? No? Okay. Evan?
So just wanted to give you some news about HCU. Part of it is that Eric has resigned as president. He's going to go be a dad. So he has a newborn and he tried for a couple months and he completely burned out. So he graciously stepped down and our HCU board appointed me to the position of presidency to fulfill the rest of his term. So I'll probably see a lot more of him. One of the more things I want to talk about just with conditions out of the schools is that with this additional classified time and these additional hours, we've seen that there's been a real, I'm getting reports, I don't know if it's true or not because I don't have visibility, but some educational assistants, special ed people, their principals call them up and say, I want you to come back early and get ready to go. We have some classified who are going out and saying, we need additional days to get stuff going, and there's some who they never hear anything. So I would caution or just remind the powers that be that prep time is really important, and those few days when it start off, it's really useful to get the room set up and to talk with people. The basic message behind that is that minutes matter. And every minute that a student is outside of class or their assistants aren't ready is one more minute that they're not able to actually learn and engage and get the education that they come to school that they expect. One good example is the special ed buses. I had one of our union members who was talking to me about that. They wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to do the routes to pick up the special ed kids and make sure they safely get to school. They get there at 8 o'clock and they sit there for a few minutes because all the assistants who are supposed to come out and get them, they arrive at 8 o'clock as well, and they're still kind of organizing and getting just the basic stuff together so they can come out and get the kids. And those few minutes that the kids are waiting out the bus, that's time when they're not engaging with parents or with educators, they're not learning, they're not doing what they need to do, and then at the end of the day, they have to get them out to the bus a little bit early just so they can finish their paperwork and get going. So as we are looking forward into the future, calendars make a difference. When their actual start date is and what their actual daily hours make a difference, and where they start in relation to students and where they end in relation to students make a big difference in just students' lives and the ability to be prepared, and that getting that sort of history and that practice of you show up on time, you get to work immediately. You don't show up and kind of sit around for a little bit. So I just continue on and keep pressing that. I'm really thankful to all the conversation and all the thought and energy that the board has put into thinking of what to do with this gain share money. It's a great gift from the city, and we got to use it to make our kids' education that much better. So thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent.
I've spoken plenty over the last 2 weeks.
I think we started that way last time. I'm starting this way to Eric.
No, nothing to add.
Adriana?
Yeah, I just want to say that today is a very special day for me. Today is 20 years that my mother passed away, and I think I just want to share, because I just came from back home. My sister had surgery and I was helping her out, but I ended up on this kind of cemetery pilgrimage that I kind of always wanted to do. And just a quote, I think, as we lose people, we're never ready. We're never ready to lose somebody in our lives. But I think one of the things that I identified with that, and I just want to share, was that I don't think I really respected as a young woman my mother's right to, as they say, quote unquote, die. So 20 years later, here it should be, maybe, I don't know, celebration of life is what I'm looking at it. But I just wanted to share a quote, because I think sometimes we spend so much time trying to wrestle, and are we doing the right thing, or are we doing the right thing? And one of my pilgrimages to cemeteries was I always wanted to visit my hero, Edward Roybal, who's a big leader in politics. He passed away. But he and his wife, Lucille Roybal, really dedicated themselves to public service. And when I went to his gravesite, in the quote there, what was said was, devoted public servants committed to helping the underrepresented, the dispossessed, and the forgotten. And I had this aha moment when I met him. And the interesting thing is, yesterday I shared a truth about myself, was that I campaigned for a Republican candidate who happened to be my neighbor, Bill Bloxam, who happens to be buried by the mausoleum at Calvary Cemetery in East Los Angeles, not too far from Roybal. So it was kind of like this frightening mission. And so I just wanted to share that. It was just, those moments of like, I found my purpose. So thank you. I'm excited. Oh, and then also because I'm getting ready to start my master's in education in September. So I'm super excited. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Glenn?
Well, first, congratulations on your next educational journey. That's going to be well rewarding. It was hard for me going back and doing mine, but it was so worth it to go through that kind of program. So, other than that, I've had a great time these last couple of days. I think we've done a lot of good work. I learned we're a chatty board, so helping you grow up supervision occasionally. Oh, but we are. I do believe we are a high functioning board. So I just appreciate all of you guys, my beloved colleagues, and I look forward to serving the rest of the year.
Janine?
I'm not going to comment on it. No, I just want to say that I am pleasantly surprised with the amount of time that we did go over yesterday, where we are in getting all that we needed to get through. So I think that there's a lot of good discussion to have, and when we have these opportunities for discussion, whether we're talking about specific topics or a policy or whatnot. I think that the value comes from not just reading and understanding, but having that discussion together and having the questions, being able to have those answered. I think that it moves us as a board to be able to have those conversations. I think that I learned that Steve completed a triathlon. That's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Wow. Yeah. So.
But he wasn't valedictorian.
He wasn't valedictorian. And, you know, and I want to also begin to say that to be in this type of situation where we're adding back dates and we're adding back finances to our district, it's a pretty great place to be. So with the amount of years that we have dealt with the cuts in education, it is exciting. And to be able to look around our community at, I mean, having those opportunities with the city that you could name so many things that they're involved in at our district, to have that kind of partnership and the Hillsboro Schools Foundation. I think that we're a very extremely lucky group, lucky school district, and, you know, pretty proud to be HSD. So, what do I want to say? Okay, Monty.
I'd like to compliment our staff for the patience and tenacity that they've shown over the last 2 days, and Mike especially. I think it's okay to push back. I want to see people pushing back when you hear something that's screwy. You know, we want to hear it, and so a high-functioning board has conflicts.
There we go. I want to echo what you did, what Monty said. Just thank you to all the staff for all of the time and preparation to get ready for these 2 days. And for those of you who were flexible and changed your focus last night and regrouped and came back and tightened it so that we finished on time, I know that you all put in a ton of time on the front end to make it feel time effective for us. And so I really appreciate that. I'm really excited about the coming weeks. Meeting new teachers, meeting new staff members, having a big launch and starting this school year. You're right, it's just a great time to be proud to be HSD. And finally, how do we shout it from the rooftops that we will have a full school year? That we are at that place, and that for all of those organizations that were so quick and easy for that to be the headline story of cut days, cut days, cut days, and then notice there are no reporters here to notice that. There won't be cut days, and how can we share and celebrate and get that word out in every possible avenue to share that. So that is a major accomplishment that we've been working towards for a long time. And so
I think all board members and Mike should be on the roof. Shouting
from the rooftops. There you go.
And that's the picture that Beth takes that's on the website saying they're shouting it from the rooftops.
Just to make sure. Nobody's going to have heartburn if I say that the board indicated its intention to vote for that. You haven't officially taken a vote. You're okay with me talking about that?
I believe so. Yeah.
We'll call you up there.
All right.
We'll follow you up to the rooftop.
There you go.
Don't look back.
There you go. All right, and with that, we will be adjourned.